Verstappen has made it clear, "I expected more from the RB21 and there is no chance of winning in Australia anymore." What is happening with Red Bull? Before I explain the problems with the car, tell me in the comments, do you think McLaren has the best car in 2025? Because the data I'm going to show you can change everything. The preseason data has made it clear that Red Bull is not coming to Australia as the dominant team of recent years. Although the RB21 remains a competitive car, its performance has been overtaken by the progress of McLaren and the strength of Ferrari. Analysis of the tests in Bahrain shows that Red Bull faces a performance deficit both in qualifying pace and in long-run simulations, which calls into question its ability to challenge for victory in the championship opener. The first worrying indicator is the pace gap with McLaren. During long runs, the RB21 was on average 0.6 per lap slower than the MCL38, a significant figure considering that Red Bull has been the team with the best tire management in recent years. This gap widened to 0.8 in qualifying simulations, suggesting that the RB21 not only lacks top speed on a fast lap, but also suffers more degradation on long runs. McLaren has made considerable progress in two key areas. The first is aerodynamic efficiency in low and medium speed sectors, where the MCL38 has demonstrated improved stability under braking and superior traction on the exit of slow corners. This was evident in the second sector of the Bahrain circuit, where the McLaren was 0.4 faster than the Red Bull, taking advantage of a better response in the interaction between the chassis and the new Pirelli tires. McLaren's second strong point has been consistency in long stints. While Red Bull experienced variations in pace due to difficulties with the balance of the RB21, McLaren managed to maintain stable times without suffering excessive tire degradation. This indicates that the MCL38 has a wider operating window, allowing it to better adapt to different types of track and race conditions. On the other hand, Ferrari has followed a different evolution, betting on a platform that prioritizes race stability over pure single-lap speed. During testing, the SF25 did not match McLaren's explosive pace in qualifying, but its consistency on long runs was notable. In race simulations, Ferrari showed less wear on the rear tires, suggesting that its new aerodynamic concept has improved dynamic balance management compared to last season. Telemetry data reveals another problem for Red Bull. The RB21 requires 12% more rear wing adjustments per lap compared to its direct rivals, indicating a less stable aerodynamic platform. This level of intervention forces drivers to make constant line corrections, which not only affects driving precision but also increases wear on tires and mechanical components of the car. This behavior already had consequences last season, when Verstappen was forced to deal with a more nervous car on circuits with bumps and raised curbs. In Melbourne, where the asphalt is similarly irregular to Bahrain, the RB21 could face similar limitations, affecting its performance in critical sectors such as the area around turns 9 and 10, where stability in changes of direction is essential to maximize speed. Reliability has also been a weak point in pre-season. During testing, Verstappen lost more than 2 hours of running time due to a failure in the energy recovery system, while Liam Lawson suffered overheating in the Honda power unit on one of his long runs. Although Red Bull has played down the severity of these incidents, the reality is that the team arrives in Australia with fewer kilometers accumulated than McLaren and Ferrari, which could affect its preparation for the first race of the year. Christian Horner has acknowledged that the focus of preseason was more oriented towards data collection than the search for fast times, which partly explains the difference with its rivals. However, the fact that Red Bull has allocated only 3 of its 7 aerodynamic upgrade tokens for the first race indicates that the team does not expect to solve its problems immediately. This leaves Red Bull in an unusual position. In previous seasons, they would arrive at the first race with a car ready to dominate from the start. In 2025, the RB21 still needs significant adjustments to reach its best level. While McLaren and Ferrari have made firm steps in their development, Red Bull is in an adaptation phase that could compromise their ability to fight for victories in the first races of the year. Max Verstappen is not a driver who is used to openly criticizing his team. Throughout his career at Red Bull, he has shown unwavering loyalty and great confidence in the work of his engineers. However, his statements after the preseason have made it clear that the RB21 is not living up to his expectations. On other occasions, when Red Bull has had difficulties, Verstappen has maintained an optimistic tone, assuring that the team would find solutions quickly. This time, his speech has been different. In several interviews, the 3-time world champion has been very frustrated and unusually direct in pointing out the weaknesses of the new car. One of the most striking comments was when he said that they expected a bigger jump in performance, especially in traction and balance in fast corners. This statement puts the focus on two key aspects of the RB21 that have not met expectations: the car's ability to deliver power efficiently on the exit of corners and aerodynamic stability in high-speed sectors. In the Bahrain tests, it was observed that the car suffers more than expected in medium and high-speed corners, something that was not a problem in previous seasons. Verstappen also expressed his concern about the car's behavior on curbs and uneven surfaces. The problems with the curbs continue to limit our ability to attack corners like 9 to 10 in Melbourne, he said in reference to a critical point on the Australian track. These types of corners require a car with a suspension that absorbs vibrations well and an aerodynamic balance that allows it to maintain stability in changes of direction. If the RB21 continues to show difficulties in this regard, Verstappen will not be able to fully exploit his aggressive driving style on street or highly technical circuits. Perhaps the most telling statement was when he admitted that McLaren clearly has the more complete package at the moment. These words are an implicit acknowledgement that, for the first time in several years, Red Bull is starting the season at a disadvantage to one of its direct rivals. McLaren has shown impressive progress and, in terms of pure pace, has outperformed Red Bull in race simulations. That Verstappen mentions this publicly shows that the gap is big enough to be a real concern. Historically, when Verstappen has made statements of this kind, the team has reacted quickly to address his concerns. In 2022 and 2023, Red Bull worked efficiently to fix setup issues that the Dutch driver had pointed out in pre-season. However, the situation in 2025 is more complex, as the RB21's performance deficit does not seem to be a minor setup issue, but a combination of structural factors that could take several races to correct. Another relevant aspect is how these statements can impact the team's internal dynamics. When a driver of Verstappen's caliber expresses his dissatisfaction publicly, it is a sign that the situation is not under control. The Dutchman's comments could put additional pressure on the engineers, especially at a time when Red Bull has lost some of its technical advantage over the competition. Verstappen's words could also influence the team's mindset in terms of development strategy. If Red Bull considers that the RB21 needs a deeper rethink to be competitive, it could speed up the implementation of updates or even modify its aerodynamic approach earlier than planned. The risk is that this process takes too long and the points lost in the first races end up affecting the fight for the championship. Verstappen's comments reflect the reality of Red Bull at the start of the season. They are no longer the dominant team that swept through 2023 and part of 2024. They must now face tighter competition and look for solutions to make up for lost ground. The question is how long it will take and whether Verstappen will have enough patience to wait for the RB21 to reach its best version before it is too late. Red Bull is not in a comfortable position at the start of the season, but the team has already defined a development strategy to try to regain the competitiveness of the RB21. Unlike other years, when they arrived at the first race with a car practically ready to dominate from the start, this time they will have to work on the fly to correct the problems detected in the pre-season. For the Australian Grand Prix, Red Bull has confirmed that it will not be carrying a significant package of improvements. The modifications that will be implemented in Melbourne are minor adjustments designed to mitigate some of the car's shortcomings, but they will not change the overall performance dynamics. Among the most significant updates are a revised front wing profile to improve aerodynamic flow to the side pods and a tweak to the rear suspension geometry to reduce understeer in low-speed corners. These modifications aim to address some of the issues Verstappen pointed out in testing, in particular the RB21's difficulty in generating sufficient grip on entry and exit of technical corners. However, in terms of competitiveness, they will not be enough to close the gap with McLaren and Ferrari in Melbourne. The real turning point in the RB21's evolution will come with the package of updates planned for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. From that race onwards, Red Bull plans to introduce more profound changes to the car's aerodynamics and mechanics. One of the most eagerly awaited developments is a new stepped floor with redesigned vortex channels. This update seeks to improve aerodynamic efficiency in medium and low-speed corners, an area in which McLaren has taken the lead. Another key modification will be the implementation of a hydraulically interconnected rear suspension system. Inspired by concepts previously used by Mercedes, this system will allow for greater stability under braking and changes of direction, reducing the car's sensitivity to irregularities in the asphalt and improving traction when exiting corners. This change could solve one of the most serious problems of the RB21, as instability on circuits with irregular surfaces has been one of Verstappen's main concerns. The energy recovery system will also be subject to improvements. In pre-season, Red Bull experienced reliability problems with the Honda RA625H power unit, with failures in the ERS system that reduced running time on track. The modifications planned in this section seek to optimize power delivery in short accelerations, something that will be essential to recover time in sectors where they are currently losing ground to McLaren. Red Bull's development strategy is also conditioned by the distribution of aerodynamic upgrade tokens. According to records submitted to the FIA, the team has used just 3 of the 7 tokens available for the first part of the season, indicating that they are reserving resources to introduce more aggressive improvements at key circuits. This suggests that Red Bull is betting on a progressive evolution approach, confident that they can make up ground in the second half of the championship. The problem is that this plan requires time and patience. While Red Bull works on fixing its problems, McLaren and Ferrari will continue to develop their own cars, meaning that the current gap could remain or even widen if the RB21's improvements do not have the expected impact. Another factor to consider is how Red Bull will manage internal pressure within the team. Verstappen has made it clear that he is not satisfied with the car's performance, and if results do not improve quickly, tension could increase. Historically, Red Bull has been a team that reacts quickly to difficulties, but this year it faces a more complex challenge as the RB21's problems do not seem to have an immediate solution. There is limited room for maneuver. If the planned upgrades for Imola do not work out as expected, Red Bull could be forced to rethink its development philosophy for the rest of the season. In that scenario, the title fight would become even more difficult, especially if McLaren continues to build up an advantage in the early part of the championship. The next month will be decisive for Red Bull. If they manage to optimize the RB21 with the planned upgrades, they will be able to get back into the fight before the summer break. But if the problems persist, the 2025 season could become a transition year, with Verstappen forced to compete at a disadvantage compared to his rivals. Red Bull's situation at the start of the 2025 season is completely different from that of recent years. They no longer have the dominant car that swept the competition, and the first races will be a test of endurance for the team. While Verstappen remains one of the most talented drivers on the grid, his ability to challenge for wins will depend largely on how quickly he can fix the RB21's problems. In Melbourne, expectations have changed. Rather than being the team to beat, Red Bull will have to focus on minimizing damage. The gap to McLaren and Ferrari in race pace is glaring, and if they fail to get an optimal setup, they could be relegated to fighting for secondary positions. While anything can happen in Formula One, logic dictates that a podium finish in Australia will be a tough task for Verstappen, especially if tire degradation and lack of cornering stability remain an issue. The biggest challenge for Red Bull is not just finding technical solutions, but doing so before the gap to their rivals becomes insurmountable. In a championship where every point counts, losing ground in the early races could compromise the title fight, forcing Verstappen to race defensively rather than attack as he has done in previous seasons. The key point will be the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. If the updates scheduled for Imola work and manage to close the gap with McLaren, Red Bull will be able to enter the battle for victories again. But if the problems persist and the improvements do not have the expected impact, the season could become a constant struggle to find performance while other teams continue to evolve their cars. Verstappen has shown in the past that he can maximize the performance of a car even in difficult conditions, but relying solely on his talent will not be enough. Red Bull needs to respond quickly and offer him a car capable of competing at the highest level. In 2021, Verstappen won his first title in a tight battle against Mercedes, but he did so with a car that was up to the challenge. In 2025, if the RB21 does not evolve in time, the story could be very different. The outlook is uncertain. Red Bull is no longer guaranteed dominance, and McLaren has positioned itself as the team to beat. The big question is whether Red Bull can turn things around in time, or whether this will be the first season in which Verstappen is forced to cede the spotlight to a new championship contender. Now the pressure is on Red Bull. The season has only just begun, but every decision they make in the next few races could define the fate of the championship.